Раз, проверим звук. Проверим. Отлично, звук есть. Всем добрый вечер. С вами Алексей. И это мой канал по видеоиграм. Вот, сегодня стрим по Genshin Impact. Продолжаем проходить основную сюжетную кампанию по Фонтейну, то бишь задание архонтов. В прошлый раз мы закончили... А на чем? А я не помню, сейчас вспомним, видимо. Вот, постримлю, как обычно, около часа. Так что, let's go. Оп. Там, по-моему, технические работы еще какие-то были когда-то вчера или позавчера ночью. Технически могут еще и примагенов закинуть на халявку. Так. Что это? А, у нас конец этой. Вот, да. Отправляйтесь по Асон. Теперь вы вовлечены в дело об исчезновениях девушек. Нравится вам это или нет? Опирайтесь на новые сведения, полученные вами во время встречи у фонтана. Люсин, вы и Навия, готовитесь к следующему этапу расследования. Точно, теперь я вспомнил, что мы делаем. Что интересно. Потому что я не хотел... Ну, я как бы по сюжету не хотел этим заниматься, но, видимо, вписался. Так, хочу посмотреть, дадут ли халявку какую-нибудь. Ага. Ну, 1300 голды, это как бы вообще никуда не упало. Ладно. Бежим тут. А, подожди. 900 метров это так далеко. Точка телепортации. А я могу сюда портироваться? Да. И я, получается, буду рядом с миссией. Только я не помню, когда я вдруг побывал в этой деревне. Случайно, видимо. Поговорите с Навией. Hello, my friend.
Whoa! What a huge ship! Why would a ship be anchored at a place like this?
Кстати, да, откуда? Что за Ноев ковчег здесь?
There's no need to be so surprised. While it may look like a ship, it's actually Spina di Rosula's headquarters. My father was the one who asked for it to be built like this. Perhaps our taste in exterior design is the only thing we occasionally had in common.
В форме корабля,
A gigantic and
серьезно?
glamorous ship embodies discovery, opportunity, ambition, and conquest. It symbolizes Spina di Rosula's bright and limitless future.
Кажется, я начинаю понимать, почему он тебе так нравится.
And Paimon thought you were bluffing when you said Spina di Rosula had a glorious past. Paimon was confused why a group with such a history would live in the sewers. But now that Paimon has seen this ship for herself, she's been convinced.
Там на самом деле корабль такой
Croissant is where Spina di
подразваливающийся
Rosula
вроде
began,
как.
after all. It's our main base, our home.
Ну, пойдем. Я так понимаю, внутри там не все очень хорошо, учитывая, что она еле-еле в прошлый раз за ресторан заплатила. Ну, сейчас проверим. Сейчас. Гоп-гоп. Гоп-гоп. А можете погладить? Можно поглажу? Ну, пожалуйста. Почему не дают гладить песню? Что это? Вода капает какую-то. Мне кажется, вот в Хогвартс Легаси шикарно сделали, да? Можно кошек наглаживать. А тут нельзя. Хотя игра побольше будет, чем Хогвартс. Мне кажется, можно было бы сделать такой легкий интерактив. Опа, где-то гидрокул. Звезда какая-то болтается. Ладно. Ой, а вот тут киса. Рыжая.
Melus, we're back!
Он, кстати, весь металлический, что любопытно.
Apologies for the wait, demoiselle, and our most important partners. You said before that you still had some business at the court. What brings you back to Poisson so quickly?
About that. It's because my partner here reminded me of something really important. You see, what if my father's case had something to do with water from the primordial sea? You still remember, right, Malus? On that night, it was raining?
Yes, the case was quite similar to that of Mr. Linney's. Both were what you'd call impossible murders.
Возможно ли, что за ними стоит один человек?
Could you tell us a bit more about what happened before?
Сейчас будут
of
воспоминания.
Many years ago, something called synth began to gain popularity in Poisson. At a glance, it was a kind of drink that could excite your mood and produce many pleasant hallucinations.
Алкоголь, что ли?
Wait! Didn't that guard guy who turned into water also mention that the primordial water could be used to produce some kind of potion?
Yes, he did. Considering what we know now, it's almost certain that synth is created using water from the primordial sea. If you drink synth for an extended amount of time, you'll suffer many side effects, such as losing the ability to focus or control your emotions. And if you were to stop drinking it completely, you'll experience flashes of paranoia and anxiety while lacking energy to do anything. It's an
Это
extremely
наркотик
dangerous
какой-то, судя
substance.
по ее описанию.
As he
С
oversaw
очень
Poisson,
любопытным эффектом.
my father was compelled to put a stop to synth abuse and called for a complete ban of it.
Boss's uncompromising attitude incurred the synth vendor's wrath, but no matter how much they threatened or bribed him, he refused to yield. Not only that, Boss became determined to find the mastermind behind the synth operation and put an end to the problem
Ну,
once and
короче,
for
его
all.
мафия убрала, по идее.
Yes. The
Какая-нибудь,
enemy was very
кто
cunning,
наркоту распространяла.
so he could never get anything out of the dealers, all of whom only sold the stuff and weren't privy to the rest of the operation. Recognizing that, my father decided to contact the dealers in secret and cultivate personal relationships with them. Finally, he was able to convince someone to become his informant. The man's name was Jacques. He felt greatly ashamed about his work after seeing many families destroyed by synth abuse. That night, my father hosted a banquet at his countryside estate. He planned to meet up and exchange information with Jacques over some food. But then, we heard 2 gunshots from the courtyard. We raced to the scene and found my father, still holding a gun, and Jacques, who was already dead on the ground.
Huh? How did that happen? Aren't they on the same side?
Даже любопытно, что их там
Sounds just like
происходило.
Lenny's case, doesn't it? In both cases, the culprit seemed obvious, but neither appeared to have any motive at all. Looking back on it, though, I now believe the most important clue was something we all overlooked at the time. There were pieces of clothing left at the scene.
Значит, она могла принадлежать кому-то, кто был растворен.
Precisely. It's all thanks to you that I made the connection now. Back then, we all just thought they were some costumes that Jacques used to disguise himself at the banquet. But, considering it now, it's almost certain that they belong to a third person at the scene. With one extra person, we'll also need to reconsider why the 2 shots were fired.
Может быть, твой отец поссорился с Жаком, но также возможно, что виноват третий человек.
You're right. We still don't know what happened. But my intuition tells me that we're on the right track to figuring it all out. I'm finally headed towards the truth.
Jacques was an empathetic man who was infinitely remorseful for his past actions. It's unlikely that he turned on Boss with 0 warning.
Любопытно,
I
значит, нам
think
третьего
this
человека надо
third
искать.
person is probably the key to the full truth.
Да?
On
Вот
that
теперь
note,
попробуй найди его.
however, even though this will not please you, demoiselle, as your and your father's butler, I must still offer a word of warning. Our opponent is insidious and cruel. They are extremely difficult to deal with, and Boss has already lost his life trying to bring them to justice. Even though Spina de Rosula has lost most of its former glory, Poisson has welcomed a new time of peace, and we have been allowed to live out our lives. There is no need to follow your father's path. it would be both wise and in line with Boss's wishes to step back and give up on the case.
If that's indeed what he wished for, then he should have told me that himself.
Может быть, это
Was I
этот
not the closest
дедок
person to
что-то
him?
задумал.
And yet I was the
Он
one
так
most kept in the
яро
dark.
пытается отговорить ее
What was the point of
заниматься
him
этим
dying
делом.
without sharing any of the secrets he knew? Did he manage to protect anything in the end? Synth is still here. Callus the Unfaithful is still his epithet. And Spina di Rosula is barely getting by. Nothing has changed. Did he think I'd just accept his meaningless death and live out my life just as meaninglessly? I've never accepted that. Ever. Not since that day, and certainly not now. I want to find out the real answer for everyone's sake. For the missing girls, for the victims, and for myself.
Какую пламенную речь она задвигает.
This is indeed the best moment to act. Your partner appears to be quite reliable, and more importantly, Demoiselle, I think you're also ready to take this on.
So you do know something else, Malus?
Yes, I do. In fact, even before that banquet, Boss already knew of the connection between Synth and the serial disappearances case. But what drove all the tensions to the boiling point was the revelation that you, Demoiselle, had been selected as the next target to disappear.
Опа.
What?
Вот это поворот.
Boss also didn't tell you that he had been diagnosed with a rare illness. The doctors told him that he had no more than 5 years left to live.
Классика жанра.
And the
Сказать, что
serial
он умирал от
disappearances case
чего-нибудь.
caused him great anxiety. 5 years was nowhere near enough time to resolve this long-standing conflict. But once he passed away, all the danger would pass on to you. Knowing all of this, he decided to use one final intimidation tactic before his death. He claimed to have already gotten his hands on some key incriminating evidence for the other side, and even told some members of Spina di Rosula about the details.
Некоторые.
But
Может
as
быть,
long as
у
you
них шпион
remain
был.
safe, he would not share the evidence with the public. If something were to happen to you, then he and all those he told would immediately expose all they knew about Synth and the disappeared victims.
Right. Free.
As we've seen, Boss's tactic has worked. Even though Boss has been gone for a long time, the other side has not tried to take Demoiselle's life.
No, I don't believe it. He never appeared to look sick to me.
No father wants their daughter to see them weak and haggard, especially someone as proud as Boss. To him, dying in a duel and suffering lasting dishonor as the unfaithful was still far preferable than losing face in front of his daughter.
Ты чихнула,
So he
что ли?
chose to
Или
die
что с тобой
in
случилось?
silence, so that he could protect me.
I'm afraid you're not understanding this correctly, Demoiselle. What Boss wanted to hand to you was not a parasol.
Кстати, а улики-то где в итоге? Нам бы глянуть на них.
If
Понять,
Boss's
что дальше
spirit
делать.
could hear you telling me that you want to find the answer for the sake of everyone involved, I'm sure he'd be extremely proud.
Давай, заканчивай болтовню, пошли дальше.
That fool. Couldn't he have just given it to me straight? No. He might have set up everything precisely because he never thought I'd be able to understand him. Is that the amount of confidence he had in me? And what if I was never able to make it to where I am now?
Он дал тебе выбор жить так, как ты хочешь.
Yeah. I suppose that's true. With the way he'd set things up, if I had wanted, I could have just lived out my life without a care in the world. But thankfully, he rarely talked to me about complex matters, and thus understood little of me as a person. In this case, he really didn't need to give me an easy way out. Huh. Malus, what was the key evidence that he shared with you?
Аллилуйя, мы
It's the
подробились к сути.
location where synth is produced. Essentially, it's the enemy's headquarters. When he was threatening the enemy, Boss didn't share the specifics of the incriminating evidence he found. But if you want to use it against the enemy, you'll still have to take several things into consideration.
Why? If we know where the place is, can't we just go storming in?
Ну да. С ноги
You
через
mustn't
парадный
forget
вход
that
просто
we're
залетаем,
fighting
да и все.
against a mysterious and dangerous organization that's been in operation for decades. There's no telling what might be lying in wait at their headquarters. We also have no idea what kind of evidence we may be able to find inside, nor what people we may be able to capture. But a single visit to their headquarters would be tantamount to a formal declaration of war. The worst case would be that we leave empty-handed, but also open ourselves up to full retaliation.
Then, in that case, why not work with the Fontaine authorities?
Well, you saw one of them dissolve during Mr. Linney's case. We have no idea just how thoroughly they may have been infiltrated.
That's true. Seems my father really had no choice. But things are different now. It should be a lot easier to prove the other side's guilt, now that we've connected Synth with the disappearances case.
You sound like you've put a lot of thought into this, Malus.
I am the butler, after all. I live but to serve the boss and Demoiselle's will.
А где молодой,
I've
кстати?
always been willing
Их
to
же
take
двое
on
было.
any kind of risk for your sake. But considering my relative lack of ability, I've spent my time keeping secrets, performing basic investigations, and waiting for the right time to come.
Thank you for all of that, Malus. Have you discovered anything new in the past few years?
Let me think. One conclusion I came to was that the enemy must be quite familiar with Spina di Rosula, or at least have an informant planted here. When I announced orders to the organization's members on Demoiselle's behalf, I used to deliberately keep a few people in the dark and observe the reactions of the synth vendors.
Умный
If the
ход, умный
vendors
ход,
didn't
действительно.
change their plans, then the individuals informed of our orders must be innocent. If the vendors packed up and fled, however, then someone must have given them the news. After several rounds of testing and investigative tracing, I've narrowed the suspect list down to 3 people. The first is Florent, Spina di Rosula's senior advisor.
Florent?
Yes, surprising, isn't it? He was one of the people Boss trusted the most, which also means that he was someone who understood Boss really well. Thanks to his position within Boss's innermost circle, he always knew our upcoming plans and could thus avoid capture this whole time. There's someone else like him too. Marcel, the head of Confrérie of Cabrières.
Все они с
Marcel.
усами, с бородой. Что за ассоциация
It's a
такая?
guild in Poisson. The boss helped it to grow to its current size and prominence. In the beginning, they were only reselling some daily goods, but now they're one of the richest guilds around, with a lot of business connections in the city.
А нахрена им тогда?
They're like a sister organization of Spina di
Следить
Rosula?
за ними.
Yes,
Если у них
you
есть
can
деньги.
say that. When we were fighting against the synth dealers, they provided us with plenty of support. It's a bit difficult to imagine someone using their own money to hunt down themselves.
The final suspect is Thierry, the man responsible for coordinating information between Spina di Rosula and the guards. Although the guards mostly leave us to our own devices, there are still many activities we have to report to the local authorities. Since Thierry is always in the know about our current activities, he could theoretically always plan one step ahead.
I see. These are all people who I communicate with quite regularly. To think that the enemy we've been fighting against has been right next to me all along, among those I trust the most. It's almost too hard to believe.
Я бы
If
все-таки
you want to
присмотрелся к этому
investigate them,
дворецкому.
please take every precaution to not alert the quarry. Judging from our experience, the enemy is extremely cautious.
Of course. And thank you, Malus. You've provided us with a lot of great information.
You're too kind, my lady. I'm just doing my duty. And before I forget, proving Boss's innocence would also mean clearing him of blame in Jacques' death. After that incident, Jacques' wife and daughter were taken into the Spina's care. They still live in Poisson today. If it might help, you could also pay them a visit. I can make the necessary arrangements.
Да, может, мы сами наведаемся?
So much, Malus. You really are the
Без
best.
предупреждения, чтобы он
A
там не
new case
предупредил их.
awaits, my dear partner.
Можешь положиться на меня.
I hope we can work together to uncover the truth and end this case once and for all.
Протокол по делу Каласса. Дождливой ночью, 3 года назад, участники банкета услышали снаружи 2 выстрела. Когда они прибыли на место происшествия, Каласс держал в руках пистолет, а Жак был застрелен. Согласно результатам расследования, никто другой не мог скрыться с места преступления после убийства, поэтому Каласса признали истинным виновным в этом деле. А я так, ты понимаешь, сейчас записки буду тебе искать, да? Вот и журнал пошел. Так, ладно, так, мне нужна небольшая пауза. Just a second, please. Скоро вернусь. Так, я вернулся. Раз. Надеюсь, звук тоже вернулся. Отлично. Звук есть. Что ж, let's go. Так, нам нужно навестить семью Жака. Тут где-то... Ладно. Этот гидрокула я не буду сейчас искать. Куда мне гнать? А, он не сильно далеко. 50 метров. Пути мне рисуют по прямой. У меня аж планер есть. Что, упоролся бегать пешком.
Please excuse me and enjoy your conversation at your leisure.
Thank you for arranging everything for us, Malus.
Вот там бабулька какая-то стоит, наблюдает за всеми.
Excuse me, miss. Do you need anything from us?
Подожди. Мисс... Она говорит... мисс, но при этом говорит ты.
This isn't like her at all.
Лучше не будем ей мешать.
I'm sorry that I only came to visit after all this time. After what happened, I didn't know how I was supposed to face the two of you.
Ah, if it's about that, there's no need to apologize. After my husband died, Spina di Rosula sent us a lot of mora and support. I understood your guilt and apology to be genuine.
But aren't all of those things nothing compared to the loss of Jacques?
Ну что поделать?
I can
Его уж не
understand the
вернуть.
kind
А
of
баблишка
pain
поможет.
that comes with losing a father so needlessly.
You don't understand at all.
I didn't know how to face you, because I didn't know what I could possibly bring as a consolation gift. I know only the full truth could bring closure to you. And to all of us.
Ага, конечно. Я так
I'm
понял.
sorry.
Это так звучит.
I appreciate the sentiment, but you don't have to carry all that guilt. On the matter regarding my husband, my daughter and I have more or less found our answer already.
Что за ответы вы
Would
нашли?
you mind sharing it with me? I really can't believe that my father could ever bring himself to shoot Jacques.
I always knew that my husband's money was earned through others' suffering. He told me countless times that if he could turn back the clock, he would never go into the synth business again. He had many regrets, and felt that he took the idea of thought Mora was everything. So when Mr. Callis came to him with a proposal, he accepted it almost immediately. He tried to be as careful as he could, but even so, he was still found out by the higher-ups.
They found out about his betrayal?
О, вот это любопытно.
Papa didn't say that exactly, but Papa did tell me that I should never be ungrateful.
Before he left that day, he told me that he had no choice. It was only later that I realized it was his final farewell to the two of us.
Неужели кто-то приказал Жаку расправиться с Калассом?
I don't know that for sure, but you could say that's the conclusion I eventually came to. Which is why I'm the one who should feel guilty. Callis had always taken great care of us, both when he was still alive and after he passed away. Even if he fired the shot that killed my husband, it was likely in self-defense. It is impossible for me to hate him for what he had done.
But Mama, why is Papa still the bad guy if he did the right thing? Papa always wanted to be a good man, so why did he have to do a bad thing in the end?
Потому что кому-то надо покупать конфеты
Always as they
на
seem.
какие-то шиши.
You still feel like your papa was a good man.
Но это, конечно, не
right?
оправдывает его, ни хрена.
Yeah, Papa was a really good man. The best in the whole world.
Then you should hold on to that. If a good man had to do a bad thing, then he must have had his reasons. Regardless of whether he left you a parasol or a sword. He must have done so to give you a better life.
Oh,
Thank you for everything you've told me. I will definitely find the truth. The current state of things is not something I'm willing to just sit back and accept.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to hear this from you. Even though your personality is quite different from your father's, your determination when you speak is really similar.
You really think so? That's the first time anyone said that to me.
Ну, допустим, мне там полюбовались. Так, окей, показания семьи Жака. Семья Жака полагает, что тот получил приказ убить Каласа, из-за чего сильно переживал. Возможно, Калас защищался, или еще или за происшествием скрывается что-то еще. Узнаем. Поговорите с Флораном. Это кто? Это туда. Мы побежали.
I'm fine. Don't worry. Let's investigate the 3 suspects next.
А мы сейчас пойдем по
Laurent should be
подозреваемым,
nearby,
понятно.
and we should be able to find Thierry and Uncle Marcel in the city.
Я тут подумал, нет, не хватает. Оп. Что это? Деньги! Люблю деньги. А это от таких... Блин, я хотел спичка разглядеть, ну ладно.
Greetings, boss. How may I be of assistance today?
I'm sure you've heard about what happened at the Opera House. Someone got turned into water right in front of us.
Yeah, I've heard. With something that dramatic, I'm sure journalists will milk it for all it's worth. And it'll be all the talk for the next several weeks.
It also reminded me, on the day that the incident happened with my father, it was raining outside. And we found some
Он
clothes left
специально
at the
задает,
scene.
чтобы он занервничал
After
или
my
что?
partner here put the dots together for me, I feel like we should try to reopen his case. Can you do me a favor and try to recall what happened that night?
Let me think. Mr. Callis was feeling pretty upbeat that day. So he was drinking and bantering away with us at the table. After that, he told us that he wanted to go get some fresh air. So we let him go without thinking much of it. Who knew that we would hear 2 gunshots ring out right after? My first reaction was that Mr. Callis's life was in danger. So I grabbed my holster and made a mad dash toward the scene. But when I got there, it was already too late. Mr. Callus was standing over a dead body with a gun in his hands. All we could do was look back and forth at each other.
Какая хорошая легенда у него. Или не легенда, или это правда. Кто его знает?
Then.
Indeed. The guard said that the first shot didn't hit anyone, while the second killed Jacques. But I've never really bought that explanation. Reason being, Mr. Callus had left his gun on the table. I even made sure to confirm that before running to the scene. But according to the guards, that doesn't mean he couldn't have had other guns on his person.
Кстати,
About the
любопытно, то,
clothes
что он
left at the
пистолет
scene that you
оставил.
mentioned. Do you think there was a third person there who was turned into water?
Вполне
At
возможно.
least from our perspective, my father had no reason to kill. So he would also have no reason to bring an extra gun with him. The gun he was holding probably belonged to Jacques, or a third person on the scene.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you're saying Mr. Callus ended up with the gun because he seized it from one of the other guys? But hold on. If that's what had happened, then why didn't he share the truth with any of us?
Зачем мы диалог ведем? Он же
He didn't even
подозреваем.
want to
Надо
face
было
the Oratrice machine,
расспросить его и
and
потянуть.
chose instead to prove his honor in a duel. Did he lose all faith in the courts after seeing someone dissolve right in front of his eyes?
Ну, кто его знает.
About that, Malus told me a thing or two. So, I think I can understand why he committed to the duel. I'll tell you everything, once the whole truth has been revealed.
Не, ну довольно сложно доказать,
I
что
understand.
человек просто растворился.
Then I'll leave Mr. Callus's honor in your hands, boss. And if I may just say one more thing. The whole Callus the Unfaithful epithet has been a thorn in my side since the day it was invented. Many people have laughed at me for still calling him Mr. Callus, even after so many years have passed. But it was Mr. Callus's trust that allowed me to rise through the ranks of Spina di Rosula and live the life I lead today. No matter what others might say, he'll always be the man I respect the most. And he'll always be my boss.
Don't worry. I will definitely find the truth. You and all our other comrades at the Spina deserve to know the truth as well.
Ладно. Так, окей, информация о Флорене. Флорен — советник Спина де Расула. Он утверждает, что очень благодарен Калласу за его доброту. Флорен был на банкете в момент происшествия и может подтвердить, что когда Каллас уходил, при нем не было оружия. А это, кстати, важный момент. То есть откуда-то появилась пушка. Чья она? Надо выяснить. Так, идем к следующему подозреваемому. Мы так непринужденно с ними общаемся. Бла-бла-бла. О, как ты резко. А он без усов.
Hey, Thierry, it's me.
Oh, now, what brings you here, Miss Navia? I've heard that you made quite the name for yourself at the Opera House.
Oh, so you've caught news of that already.
Oh, okay. Hey, I'm also a member of the Guards, you know. The way you make it sound, people would think I was sent off to Poisson because I had done something wrong.
Are you sure there isn't a little bit of truth in that? Under normal circumstances, shouldn't you have been called back to the city already?
I mean, where I work is really up to me. Let's just say I enjoy the ambiance of Poisson. Callus did a fantastic job running the town, building Spina di Rosula from the ground up and clearing many obstructions in my way. It would be next to impossible for me to find a similarly easy but high-paying job in the city. Anyway, enough chit-chat. Are these two friends of yours? You, here for some formal
Ну,
business?
сразу к делу.
Ah, yes. These two are my partners. What happened at the Opera House made us realize that Linny's case and my father's may be related. We're trying to reinvestigate the details of my father's old case.
Давай, рассказывай свою
I
версию.
get it. You think there might be more to the case now that we know people can be dissolved into water, right? I was also flabbergasted when I first heard of it. If you want to go through the original files from your father's case, I can help you look for them.
That'd be much appreciated. Thank you. Actually, I have another question. Do you have the authority to dispatch Gardamex?
Of course.
Что это?
Without them, I
Жандарматоны.
couldn't possibly handle Poisson on my own.
Это типа роботы вот эти, которые
Why do you
гоняют?
ask? We definitely can't use them to forcefully get more evidence for your father's case.
Well, you see, just recently, we were attacked by a horde of unnumbered Gardamex in the city.
Ну да, это
So,
те механические
If
роботы.
you hypothetically wanted to do something against me, all you would need to do is get rid of the mecha serial numbers and send them after me.
Then you think too highly of my abilities. Dispatching mecha is very different from controlling them. If I had to make an analogy, when you order a dish, the chef will make it for you. You can ask the chef to cook, but not to massage your shoulders or carry your baggage. If you try to make unreasonable demands, the chef would just think you're out of your mind and ignore you completely. The same goes for me and my Gardamex. Removing a serial number is also not as easy as you might think. There are a lot of complex steps to it, and it's almost impossible to keep it a secret.
То есть где-то
So I can promise
есть
you, those mecha were definitely private units.
архив каких-то
They're
этих.
certainly not cheap. So, whoever their owner is must be super
Архив
rich,
серийных
powerful,
номеров
or both.
этих
Now that you
роботов.
mention it, though, being in the synth business would definitely be profitable enough to afford this.
Звучит разумно.
Oh, then you're officially in the clear, Thierry.
Что это был за жест?
Thank you for the vote of confidence,
Или он
Nadia.
что-то скрывает? Или он
Jokes
и есть
aside,
босс?
I'd like to wish you all the best with your investigation. I'll be staying in the city for a little while, so just come find me if you need any support from the guards.
Ну, допустим, информация от Тьерри. Тьерри ответственный за координацию и обмен информацией между Спино де Расула и жандармами. Длительное время обеспечивает общение между ними. По его словам, только очень богатые люди могут в частном порядке содержать большое количество жандармантонов. Я только сейчас осознал, что атмосфера Фонтейна это типа склонность к французским ноткам, так сказать. Типа вот эти названия, их жандармы. Короче, есть вот это вот а-ля Франция, что-то во всем, скажем так. Ну да ладно. Так, мне же нужно связаться с Марселем. А где Марсель? А я как-то туда по-быстрому могу попасть? Наверное. А можно пробежаться. Где? Он тем более снизу. Я думал, мы найдем, как пробежаться. Мне кажется, тут в этом городе сундуки искать это пипец. Запаришься. Вот он и третий подозреваемый. Давай общаться. Говори.
Hello. How may I help you?
I'm here to see Marcel. Could you please let him know? You can just say Navia's looking for him.
Он же там босс
Sure.
торговой
I will let
гильдии.
him know right away.
Марсель. Почему-то у таких людей всегда это. После неожиданного ожидания.
Navia,
Недлительного
hello.
ожидания.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
Марсель
I'm not as young as I used to be, so my legs are
появился.
giving out a bit.
Oh, it's all right, Uncle Marcel. There's no need to stress. I just wanted to talk to you briefly about what happened in the Opera House. I'm sure you saw everything too, right?
Yes, I've never seen anything so strange.
И он тоже с усами.
You were at the Opera House too?
Если верить логике, то
That's
тот
right.
чувак без
I
усов,
went there
скорее
with
всего,
Navia to see the magic
виновник.
show. Who knew it would turn into a whole murder mystery? I also witnessed your marvelous sleuthing work. Quite impressive. To beat the Hydro Archon at her own game on her own turf, I can already imagine everyone in Fontaine discussing your exploits over a few glasses of wine.
Oh, Paimon doesn't want to become the talk of drunkards.
Apologies. It's just how Fontaine is as a nation. Everyone loves drama and theatrics.
Uncle Marcel, you've also noticed that other thing, right? The fact that humans can dissolve in water?
Yes, I was reminded of your father's case right away. Is that what you're investigating now?
Какой догадливый
Exactly.
дядька, а?
I still don't have much solid proof, but I can sense that the other side has already begun to act.
Oh, and what makes you say that?
We were attacked on Araneus by some unnumbered Gardamex. And there was also an attempt to get me to drink water from the primordial sea.
If not for the vigilance of my partner, I probably wouldn't even be here talking to you right now.
Oh, you're giving us too much credit. Wasn't it you who protected us?
Alas, it seems things are heating up again. The peace that Callus sought so dearly will soon become a thing of the past. But rest assured, Navia, Poisson will always remain a safe haven for you. If you're scared, you can always return there. If anyone dares to lay their hands on you there, the Confrérie of Cabrières will use its funds to the last Mora to bring them to justice.
О, влиятельный
Thank
друг,
you,
это
Uncle
хорошая
Marcel.
история.
But I don't intend to go into hiding. I'm going to strike while the iron's hot. Do you have any new thoughts on my father's case?
About that. Sorry, my age is catching up with me, so it'll take me a while to recall my memory.
Время, чтобы вспомнить? Странная отмазка.
The Confrérie was responsible for that banquet, so I was out and about the whole time making sure things were running smoothly. I didn't even have the time to drink with the guests. Then I heard the sound of a gunshot, and the rest was history.
Такие
It's
недовольные.
okay.
Типа,
No
он
need
ничего
to
не
push
сказал.
yourself. We'll ask around some more. See if there are any valuable clues elsewhere.
Sounds good. Just let me know if you ever need Mora.
Да смотри-ка, он еще подкупить нас пытается.
All my wealth comes from Callus's patronage and support. I'll spend however much it takes to clear his name.
А можно нам карманные расходы дать денег? Миллионов так 10. Окей, информация о Марселе. Марсель – президент торговой ассоциации Кабриера, организатор банкета несколько лет назад. Спина де Расула и торговая ассоциация Кабриера всегда поддерживали тесные деловые отношения. Хотя воспоминания о Марселе о прошлом деле несколько туманны, он готов заступиться за Навию. Допустим, систематизируйте улики с Навией. Окей, давай. Куда нужно пойти? Туда. Понял? Бегу. По ощущениям, пока вот чисто логические методы исключения, может быть, я считаю, что тот чувак без усов. Я буду за эту теорию до конца топить. Либо дворецкий, короче, предатель. Вот и узнаем. Там, подожди, там есть этот телепорт, я хочу его активировать сначала. Раз. Пошла такая жара. Да, вижу. О, это мадам в цветном платье. Автор колонки паровой птицы. Интересно. Где-то я видел, что там в телеграм-канале, по-моему, у Геншина паровая птица, там много всего контента выходит такого информационного, скажем так.
We've talked to all three suspects, purely based on their conversations with me.
None of them sounded particularly suspicious.
Мне не кажется, что кто-то из них виновен.
I suppose that's to be expected, though. If a single conversation's all that's needed to find them out, then my father wouldn't have needed to investigate the case for so many years. Anyway, even though we didn't make a breakthrough, let's still compile what we were able to find.
But where should we start?
Мотив Жака.
Ah, you're right. Flora mentioned that Callus probably only ended up with the gun because of circumstance. That makes sense.
According to Jacques' family members, he already told them that he had been discovered, and that he had no choice before he left home that day. If I had to guess, he probably received an order from the synth boss to kill my father. Had he refused, he and his family's lives would have been forfeit.
So, Jacques fired the first shot?
На его месте я бы вообще не стал стрелять.
Oh? And why is that?
Был бы он в безопасности, покончив с Калласом. Была бы его семья в безопасности после смерти Калласа.
Good point. Jacques probably already knew that he was just being used as a tool for murder. And once he had completed his mission, he'd be of no more use to his boss.
Huh. So, what would make more sense from his perspective would be to turn his back on the Order and seek protection from my father.
Логично, логично. Похоже, все пошло не так из-за какого-то третьего.
Makes sense. But without evidence, that's still just a theory.
Но это хотя бы догадки, в которых
Besides, Jacques,
куда
the
можно
attack from
порыть,
the
скажем
Gardamex has
так.
been bothering me quite a bit as well. It's obvious that our enemy has become more antsy after the secret of the primordial seawater was revealed.
Do you think he knew, even then, that we'd follow this lead to the end?
Given everything that's happened since, it's quite possible. But who among the three suspects would have the ability to control privately owned Gardamex?
Thierry.
Thierry, you say? Huh. It is possible that he's figured out a way to convert the Gardamex for personal use.
Ну да, он всю теорию знает. Я думаю,
Didn't
на
feel like he
практике
was
может
lying
сделать.
when he was talking to us about the mecha. I also don't think he'd be able to keep that kind of tampering under wraps.
Почему? У него есть вся
He
информация, он
actually
все знает.
tampered with the mecha. We'd be able to prove it with a simple check of the guard's inventory. If the mecha were taken from the guards, it should be pretty easy to find out when and how that happened.
Возможно, это был кто-то другой. Марсель. У него бабки
Uncle
есть.
Marcel? My father did really trust him. And they worked together on a large number of projects. Maybe that's how he got to know Jacques. And with funds from the Confrérie, he could also afford a large number of Gardamex. It's still really hard for me to imagine, though. After all, Uncle Marcel has been around since I was just a child. Also, wouldn't this mean he has been spending a whole lot of mora and energy to fight his own synth business?
Возможно, это был кто-то другой. Ну а кто у нас самих три? Флориан?
Florent? It is true that he was closest to my father, and thus had the best chance of learning about his dealings with Jacques. But as Spina di Rosula's advisor, his work mostly deals with personnel and security, so he shouldn't have much means when it comes to finances.
So you're saying he's too broke to afford a mecha army?
Exactly. He can't. And even if he could, I don't think he would be able to dispatch a whole group so quickly. Who could it be?
Нахрена мы тогда рассуждали? Я думаю. И мы типа сейчас будем вот это, да? Так, окей. Ищем. Информация о Тьере. А вот не расследовано чего-то. Дождливой ночью 3 года назад участники банкета услышали снаружи 2 выстрела. Когда они прибыли на место пришествия, Каллас держал в руках пистолет, а Жак был застрелен. Согласно результатам расследования, никто другой не мог скрыться с места преступления после убийства, поэтому Калласа признали истинным виновным в этом деле. Семья Жака полагает, что кто-то получил приказ убить Калласа, из-за чего сильно переживал. Возможно, Каллас защищался, или за пришедшим скрывался что-то еще. Флорен, советник Спина де Расула, он утверждает, что очень благодарен Калласу за его доброту. Флорен был на банкете в момент происшествия и мог подтвердить, что когда Каллас уходил, при нем не было оружия. Допустим. Тьерри, ответственный за координацию обмена информацией между Спина де Расулой и жандармами, длительное время обеспечивает общение между ними. По его словам, только очень богатые люди могут в частном порядке содержать большое количество жандармов. Марсель, президент торговой ассоциации Кабриера, организатор банкета несколько лет назад. Спина де Расула и торговая ассоциация Кабриера всегда поддерживали тесные деловые отношения. Хотя воспоминания Марселя о прошлом деле несколько туманны, он готов заступиться за Навию. Ну, допустим, мы выберем его, так как он не рассказал, что произошло.
You know, if you think everything through, Uncle Marcel is indeed the most suspicious of them
Он
all.
единственный, кто не рассказал, что там было тогда.
Other suspects? Malus didn't know about the people turning into water thing when he narrowed it down to these 3, did he?
Malus has always been very reliable. and his judgment of others' trustworthiness has been fair and well considered. When he laid out his case for the three, the rationale he gave me made a lot of sense as well. The suspect is knowledgeable about the Spina's internal affairs, has the means to dispatch Mecha to assassinate us, and possesses significant intellect and foresight. Even if I don't want to believe it, I'm starting to see how things could all tie back to Uncle Marcel.
Он очень близкий тебе человек.
Well, we still have another trump card on top of all the theorizing and speculating.
Да, место производства абсинтиона. Фу, блин. Абсинтиона. О, выговорил. Так.
Yes. Malus did say that charging straight in there would be extremely risky. But we don't have any other options right now. We need far more solid proof before we can hope to go charging in on our enemy.
Navia, here you are. Oh, I've been looking for
Опа.
you.
Этот прибежал. Зачем?
Huh? Aren't you the guy from the guards? Did something happen?
Yeah. News came from Irenaeus just after you left. We've got another trial on our hands.
Wasn't that place built specifically for holding trials? What's so newsworthy about this one?
I know. But they said the person they're putting on trial is a Fatui harbinger called Tartaglia.
Опа. Кстати, да, про него вообще забыл. Он же там появлялся где-то в начале. Child?
What? Is that someone you know?
Yeah, we know him. Maybe even a little too well.
Well, he's been accused of being the true culprit behind the serial disappearances case. It's absurd, don't you think?
Wait, how? None of our investigations have had anything to do with him.
That's what I thought was strange about it, so I came to tell you the news right away. If the charge against him stands, then it'll be next to impossible to get the guards to support any of our planned investigations.
Right, because they'll think they've already found the culprit.
Yeah, and it'll be a lot harder then to clear Mr. Callus's name.
I understand. Well, partner, what do you think we should do? We still haven't
то
found
есть всю
any
ответственность ты
conclusive evidence.
спихиваешь на меня. Предлагаю разделиться.
Huh? Split up? What do you mean?
Ты можешь отправиться на остров Эрини, а я смотрю то место. Я уверен в своих способностях.
Just as expected of my partner. Since this is a trial about the serial disappearances case, the culprit's attention will be focused on Irenaeus, leaving his home base wide open. You're right. This is our best opportunity. All right then, let's do this. I'll stall them at the Opera House and charge Marcel as the true culprit. I won't have any chance of making that charge stick, though, unless we find more evidence. It'll be up to you to make it back in time and hand the decisive evidence to me.
Можешь об этом не беспокоиться.
We'll help you, just like you helped us in Lenny's trial.
Demoiselle, please allow us to accompany you.
I'm ready.
О, молодой появился.
Malus, Silver, when did you two get here?
We heard that you'll be leaving Poisson and figured that you might require our assistance. It's our hope that your confidence will be bolstered with the two of us by your side.
Thank you so much. Then, let's make haste for Irenaeus. Paimon, Traveler, I'll see you at the Opera House.
See you then.
Ага. Так, окей. Анализ подозреваемых. Учитывая информацию о жандармантонах и результат их расследования, мы можем сделать вывод, что единственный человек, который мог иметь в своем распоряжении большое количество жандармантонов и заниматься абсинтионом, не оставляя следов, это Марсель. Допустим.
Now that Navia has set out for Irenaeus, we should also get going.
Почему мы
The
оказались
location
здесь?
has already been marked on the map, so let's head over.
И куда? Мы типа рядом с ним. Я думаю, на этом, наверное, и закончу. Осталось буквально 3 минутки, да, и не буду сейчас новую арку, там дофига всего можно это найти и так далее. Там еще, кстати, сундук вижу модный. Ну да ладно. Вот, на сегодня все. Всем спасибо за просмотр. Завтра будет стрим. Завтра же, по-моему, да, по Resident Evil. Так что приходите посмотреть. Будем открывать кирпичный завод. Вот, вообще расписание стримов есть в моем телеграм-канале, группе ВКонтакте, либо дискорд-сервере. Все ссылки есть в описании канала. Подписывайтесь на соцсети, ставьте лайки, пишите комментарии, если есть что сказать. И до новых встреч. Всем пока-пока.